they're in come together to work together, they would essentially echo exactly what you just said. But something happens when they get back there. And what's pulling on Congress that makes it, at least from the outside, almost impossible for them to work together on the really significant issues?
Well, I think, in a word, ambition, I think, plays a huge role. As soon as somebody cares more about incumbency, remaining in office, or about the next committee assignment, or about the next elected office, as soon as they care more about that than they do about caring for their constituents, then they
And you'd care about that too. If you got elected once, you'd want to get reelected.
I don't know. I mean, look, what I would like to do is approach this as I think anybody who goes into a business deal, who has the leverage in a business deal, is the person who's willing to walk away. I didn't go into the Navy wanting to become an admiral. I went into the Navy wanting to do something that I enjoyed, that I was proud of, and that would hopefully have some lasting value. That's how I would like to approach this. I don't need another career. I'd like to go there with the willingness to walk away and do something that I think my kids can be proud of, and then come back to my community. I frankly think that's the only way that you can approach this and have the chance of doing that, because we can all get along with other people and work with other people, but there's a system there that plays on the ambition of the folks who go to Washington.
Deficit is out of control, and it's frightening for so many people. And I know, with families, and you look at what you might be able to afford in terms of paying for college, leaving something for the kids. People are just worried. How do you go about taking that on without higher taxes?
Well, that's one of the biggest issues we have in our country right now. We have a deficit and debt problem that is bankrupting our country, and it's saddling future generations with debt they can ill afford to pay. I think it's wrong. And we need folks in Congress who are going to take that very seriously. Mike Kaufman, Congressman Mike Kaufman, who's a supporter of my campaign, has formed the Balanced Budget Caucus in an effort to push Congress towards balancing its budget. We do it at the state level, we do it at the local level. When I sit across the table with my wife and we look at our 3 kids, we figure out how to make our checkbook balance. It can be done, and that would be the single largest thing that could go towards helping us get a more fiscally responsible Congress. But there are things that we can do in the meantime that I think would make a difference. There are a number of areas where we need to reform and to make some cuts, quite frankly. The Heritage Foundation cites over $90 billion in improper federal payments, $70 billion in corporate welfare, $25 billion in vacant and unused federal property. You look at the situation with Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, those 3 programs alone are scheduled to consume the entire federal budget. I would note this, one of the big challenges, if you look at the Social Security Trustees report, one of the big challenges around Social Security is they're basing Social Security on an economic growth rate of just over 2%. This is why I go back to economic growth. Folks who've worked in the private sector who understand that we've got to grow our economy at a higher rate in order to deal with not only our budget and deficit issues, but to ultimately get Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare on a solid footing.
Len, would you support perhaps some sort of an income consideration when it comes to Social Security, high-income retirees, perhaps sacrificing some of what they thought they were going to get just so that it is able to stay solvent for those who truly need that Social Security check?
I think we ought, with Social Security and with all our entitlements, I think we ought to put everything on the table without, with the exception of higher taxes. Social Security, to a certain extent, is a much simpler math problem than health care. I mean, when Social Security was enacted in 1935, average life expectancy was 64, and we had a lot more productive workers relative to retirees. It's now 77 and a lot higher in some demographic groups. So I think we need to work to protect benefits for people of middle age and seniors who have paid in and have a reasonable expectation of getting a benefit. But my 5-month-old son, let's face it, is probably not going to get Social Security at the age of 65. Mm-hmm. If I could, also on health care, which really is, that is the largest chunk of our entitlement budget, and we cannot get our budget under control without getting health care costs under control. And when we talk about market-based solutions, I want to focus on 3 things. One is tort reform. I don't know anybody who suggests that it wouldn't lead to some savings. The question is just how much. Two is the ability to purchase insurance across state lines. We do that in virtually everything else in our economy, and there are estimates that would not only lower costs but increase coverage for about 12 or 13 million people. And then third, let's look at the third-party payer system, which frankly just doesn't make any sense relative to how we do the rest of business in our marketplace.
I'm guessing there are a lot of viewers out there who, listen to you two gentlemen and both articulate about where government can be cut and where savings can be had.
I'm just happy that there are a lot of viewers on there.
That's right. And then we'll have a few Democrats on here in a week or two, and the wrap on Democrats is that they can't find any government to cut, but that Republicans can't find any new revenues or are unwilling to ever consider any new revenues to enhance. Are there any circumstances where either of you would consider any kind of a tax increase, even in a time of national emergency, even if deficits continue at the level that they are now?
Well, I would just say, Eric, I just don't think now's the time to be talking about tax increases at all. That's not what we need. We need economic growth. And as I said at the beginning of the segment, we saw both under the Reagan administration as well as under the Kennedy administration that when they put into place tax relief, government revenues actually increased as did the economy soar. If you put it in perspective, I don't want to get too technical, but if you look historically, average, the federal government's average tax take, in other words, how much they take out of the gross domestic product, GDP, is right around 18.5%. So logically it would follow, if you grow your economy at, say, rates of 3.5% or greater, that 18.5% grows proportionately. That's the key. You want to grow your economy, you need more revenues for government to help get your debt and deficit under control, to pay for services and programs. Grow your economy. That's the key.
I do not think now's the time to talk about taxes, and I think citizens out there have a great deal of cynicism about government, and they sort of have the view that fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I think that before the government can talk about increasing taxes, they need to prove that they can get their arms around spending. They need to prove that they can be efficient. I think the same thing, frankly, applies to border security. Until that border is secure, people do not want to talk about other issues related to immigration because the government has lost their confidence.
Let's talk about national defense, which is all about keeping this country safe. And that takes us to Iraq and Afghanistan. Do you think that at this point the American public feels confident that the huge amount of both human and financial resources and sacrifices being made in those two countries is the way to go? Or do you think that we're starting to wonder, we do just this blind trust in the military and in the government to say, this is where we need to be? Is it where we need to be? Is it the best use of our national defense spending?
Well, with respect to, there are many subjects there that we could talk about. With respect to Iraq, I think people do understand, and even folks who are not neoconservatives understand, that a safe, secure, stable, and relatively prosperous Iraq in the heart of the Middle East is a good thing. Mm-hmm. And I think they understand that we've come a long ways towards doing that, and that we should stay resolute and support the Iraqi government as it moves forward. And I think in talking to people in living rooms out there, they understand that, and that is certainly the way I feel. With respect to Afghanistan, what we have seen recently is that this president's policies have come under fire, because I think there are two fundamental things that worked in Iraq that have not been in place in Afghanistan. One is a timeline that is clearly based on conditions on the ground, and two is a civil military team that actually works well and plays well together, like we had with General Petraeus and Ambassador Crocker in Afghanistan. Until those two things are fixed in Afghanistan, I think we're going to have some serious problems.
Well, General Petraeus, do you think he'll be able to play nice with the administration? Maybe unlike the gentleman he replaced?
Well, I think that General Petraeus probably shares General McChrystal's views of of that timeline and of how it is hampering efforts on the ground over there. And I think it's quite possible that this president will rue the day that he appointed General Petraeus to that position, because I think he's going to find someone who shares General McChrystal's views and is maybe more adept at political maneuvering. But until we get those two things squared away, I think we'll have some challenges there, and it's this administration's fault.
Ryan, what's right, what's wrong in Afghanistan?
First of all, we have to make sure that when we bring our troops home, we bring them home in victory. You know, I've served in the United States Navy. I was assigned to the National Security Agency. I worked in the intelligence community. I know a thing or two about national security issues, both abroad and domestically. And the challenges we face in the Middle East are very real. The threat of terrorism to our country, to those of us who dare to call ourselves Americans, is very real. And so when I look at Afghanistan, I say, and I think most Americans who are looking at what's going on over there, you're wondering ultimately, what does victory look like? What does success look like? At what point can we say we've done the job we needed to do and our troops can come home? I happen to believe that there are three major milestones that need to have some level of stability in order to determine victory: economic, military, and political. We need those measures of stability to determine victory and to ultimately bring our troops home. But let me tell you, we cannot afford to allow the Taliban or any other terrorist-related groups to find a footing in Afghanistan again, because it is a threat, because our borders are so insecure. And we have to remember, no one thought 9/11 was possible before it happened, but these are terrorists, and we must take the fight very seriously.